The Business Visibility podcast series is brought to you by my strategy sessions. That's 90 minutes of pure focus on the growth of you and your business. Go to angelarasmus.com/strategy for more information. Inspiration, clarity, confidence, and wholehearted business strategy. Welcome to Your Next Chapter, the podcast especially for women in their 40s and beyond who know that business and personal development go hand in hand. Tune in each week for marketing, mindset, and personal growth strategies, along with inspiring stories from women around the world who are creating new businesses and lives that are personally fulfilling and financially rewarding. If you're looking to create a business and life you love, you're in great company. Let's find out what will unfold in your next chapter. I'm your host, Angela Rasmus, and I'm so delighted that you're here. Hey, I've got a free gift for you. It's a wonderful resource I've created that goes along with this podcast series. If you go to angelarasmus.com/visibility, you'll be able to download the workbook, and it helps you create and implement your own visibility plan. I hope you'll find it really helpful. And now, on with the show. Hello there and welcome back to another episode in the Your Next Chapter podcast. This is Angela Rasmus. Now, you've hit us in the middle of the Business Visibility series, which is all about smart strategies to raise your brand profile and to connect you with more of your most aligned clients. Now, it's been fantastic episodes so far, and I'm really looking forward to today's because we're having a wholehearted conversation with Sean D'Souza, who is the founder of Psychotactics, which is a fantastic website and business that teaches you how to really connect with your most aligned clients using psychology, really understanding why and how people move through the buying cycle and all of the skills that you can enhance within your own skill set that can help improve those relationships. Sean is also the host of the 3-month vacation podcast, which when you hear him talk about what is possible when you design a business that actually fits around your life instead of the other way around, can really give you true freedom as an entrepreneur. Sean, thank you so much for joining me today.
You're welcome. It's great to be here.
Wonderful. Well, I actually got to give a little bit of the backstory as to how I came into your world, because I was at the Your Next Chapter. I was at the We Are podcast event last year, and you were a speaker there. And one of the things that you taught us and touched on at that conference was fantastic. It was about announcements and snippets when it came to actually releasing your content out into the world if you were focusing on online courses. I spoke to my own mastermind clients about it. We had a really deep conversation about how it made so much sense. And then I found out I'd been in your world for a while. I'd actually purchased the Brain Audit almost 8 years ago when I had my marketing agency. So I've progressed a lot within that time. And I love to find out from my guests, what were your previous chapters before, Psychotactics became your main focus in the way that you work in the world? So can you give us a little bit of background on the life before for Sean?
Yeah, I used to live in India, so that was in Mumbai, and I wanted to be a cartoonist, and so that's what I did in university. And so I was able to pay my own university fees, buy myself a motorcycle, do all kinds of stuff that usually you can't do when you're in university. And after that, towards the end of the university years, I decided that I wanted to do copywriting. And I modeled myself on this guy called Christopher De Rosario, who was the top copywriter in an agency which I really admired. In India, the advertising agencies, they put their name on every ad, so you know which agency is working on that ad. And so I could track them almost like people track competitors these days. And so I went and met him, and he said, you still got some time to go. You still have to improve your stuff. And that was all the kind of background. Then I joined Leo Burnett, which is one of the largest agencies in the world. I got in through my cartoons, not through my copywriting skills. And I convinced the creative director that they could try me out for a month, and then I would try them out for a month. And if it didn't work out, then we could both go our separate ways. So I just went from things like cartooning to copywriting to then writing TV commercials, which were 30 seconds long. And then when we got to New Zealand, I was still drawing cartoons, but at some point I read this book called Good to Great, and it said, what can you be the best in the world at? And I couldn't answer cartoons, even though the cartoons were I was getting a lot of work, but I wasn't, I don't know, there was something that was kind of missing. And somehow, for some weird reason, marketing seemed to be what I could be the best in the world at. So it wasn't specifically the broad topic of marketing, but keeping clients. So getting clients to keep coming back. And that is something that we have done very successfully. And now the business is 18 years old. Almost 18 years old. So yeah, we have a track record now.
Absolutely. And I love that as we're hearing that the pathway that you've gone through, there's an evolution that's happening there. You didn't wake up one morning and say, this is the thing. You were taking steps and refining as you went along and, following a little bit of that gut instinct there. And I love the fact that that question came up in Good to Great. It's a really, really good book. I remember reading that myself quite a few years ago as well. But that concept of marketing was the thing, and the core of the marketing is the getting clients to keep coming back. I was looking back through the way in which I'd connected with you, and I was looking at my wee journey and seeing there was the brain audit, even though I'd forgotten I had it originally. Then there was We Are Podcast. Then it was investing in the article writing course because that was a specific skill that I wanted to develop. And then I went on to the website report, and now I'm in 5000 BC. So it's that perfect example of how the way in which you craft your content and the way in which you share it with your audience, it brings us further and further into the heart of your business. And that relationship keeps getting built upon. And that's the thing that's really worked for me.
Yeah. So I detest the concept of funnels. I'm glad people do, they like it. I don't like the concept of squeeze pages and funnels and all these catchwords that people use, because they almost treat the customer like they're a non-entity. It's like just pay the money and then get off from my face. I like to think of it as a karate sequence where you go from white belt to whatever, yellow belt to brown belt to whatever. So there is this care, guidance, and protection. And if you treat your clients like you treat your child, then they will go away, but they always come back.
I completely agree. And I think a lot of people who are in my audience the concept of funnels just doesn't sit well. It feels, I grew up in New Zealand as well, actually on a farm. And it made me feel like you were herding people and then sort of trapping them in one of those little paddocks like sheep almost. And it just didn't feel right. But that concept of the karate sequence, I really like the feel of that. There's that increasing levels of intimacy, increasing levels of service and helpfulness. And if you're taking good care of your clients and you're solving real problems, then why wouldn't they, come into your world and stay there? It makes perfect sense. But I know one of the things that brought me in first and foremost to your world was reading articles. And that even today, with all the different ways, all the different options that we've got to market to increase our visibility, to be seen and heard by the clients that are most aligned with us, article writing is still incredibly important. I actually take care of, amongst all the different clients I have, a professional services association, and we do a big survey each year to professional services people, and we're finding that still the figure was 68.8% of people get their information, their learning, through articles online. So it's still a very, very big chunk. So what role do you see as article writing plays in your business as a whole, and how important is it to us as solo and micro entrepreneurs to get our thoughts out there?
The article is almost like a speech on paper. So the point is that when you walk into the room, you have one perception. And if the article is written well, it's not like 3 tips to do this and 4 tips to do that. But if the article is written well, it's a transformative. Suddenly you think, wait, I didn't have this skill 5 minutes ago. Now I do. So we'll talk about it. One of the articles that we've turned now into a report was very early in Psychotactics. We had this article, which was how to write headlines in under 10 minutes. And it doesn't just tell you how to write headlines, but it explores why you're behaving that way. And people would get in, they would read the article and go, wow, 5-10 minutes ago, I didn't have this skill. And so it has this power to transform the person. And if it's done well, it has the power to educate but there's also this entertainment factor. And if you write well, it's impossible for people to not escape. Well, they don't want to escape. Let's put it that way.
The entertainment piece, I know a lot of your work is accompanied by your gorgeous cartoons, and so there's definitely that element that's there right away. But I love the fact that there is that three-prong. You can educate, you can inform, and you can entertain. And you also mentioned there that you've taken articles and you've turned them into reports. So if you're coming up with a great concept that is well read, you can then extend it and turn it into something bigger than what it began with.
That's right. So it can go into reports. It can go into a seminar, a webinar, the same thing. And you say, well, wouldn't people be bored with the same thing? And they're not. In fact, that's exactly what happens with 5000 BC. I write it in great detail, and then they say, can we have a report? And then I write the report, and then they go, can we have this in audio form? So you learn differently, and people want to, they want to buy stuff differently. If I were to take all the stuff that was already given in 5000 BC or in any place free, and then I said, okay, now I'm going to put it together in a package, they still want it.
Absolutely. And I remember I saw on your site, just taking that further, you said that teaching is in your family, and that when we've got something complex, we need to break it down into the components and then reassemble it with incremental learning, so that that's what leads to mastery. And I guess in a way what you're saying there is that if you take a concept, you can teach people to a certain level in an article, then you can go deeper in a webinar, you can go deeper in a workshop, you can go deeper, it goes on and on from there. So I think quite often we underestimate what we do know and how much original content we've got to come up with. Because I know when I am working through the article writing course, the concept of subtopics was a huge one. Oh my God, I don't have to just talk at a high level. I can actually break it down, and I've got 20 different aspects that I can actually talk about with this particular topic. And that was even a simple concept like that was a real eye-opener for me, that I actually had more to talk about than I originally thought. So,
and that's not even getting to the level of subtopics.
Then before I knew it, I was coming up with 100 different things, and that's it. I don't have to ever come up with an idea again.
Yeah. So you see why this writer's block thing is nonsense. It is. So a lot of it is the preparation, and it's like a chef. When you go to a restaurant, a chef turns out like 200 meals a night, and you go, I can't turn out a meal a night. I'm too tired. You can't turn it out because of the preparation, and it's all the prep work that makes a great article. It's not the article itself is probably the easier part.
Well, let's have a look at that then, because I think, as you said earlier, people learn in different ways. But I think we also have the perception of ourselves, and this may be some of the piece that causes the writer's block. I'm not a good writer. There's so much content out there on the internet anyway. Everyone's already spoken about this topic or that topic. How could I add to it? And I think you and I share a belief here that when it comes to a particular topic, yes, of course it's been written about before. This internet thing's been around for a while, but no one has written about it the way that you will. No one can bring the perspective and the experience and the insight and just the way of looking at it that you can. So if we look at that as a starting point, how can we release a listener to have them think, you know what, I can write. I don't have to be, Brené Brown, but I can write. So how do you deal with, or how do you help people through that idea of being able to write, the confidence piece?
Okay, so just to go back to your point that everything's been written. So there are two parts to it. The first thing, that everything hasn't been written. So that's very crucial. So for instance, let's take a topic like headlines, right? Mm-hmm. And then you look for how to create headlines with your client testimonials. And you look for that topic and you'll find, and probably we wrote it, but nobody else has. So once you go from the topic to the subtopic into the subtopics, you'll find that there are hundreds of articles that you can write that no one has ever thought of. And they're very, very interesting. Things that you know of, that as you're writing, you're exploring, and you're going, oh, I know this stuff as well. So not everything has been written to begin with. The second thing is that when everyone has written it, they haven't written it with the same voice, with the same pace, with the same stories, everything is different. And to recognize this kind of thing, it's almost like a movie, like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. I mean, they can make that movie 100 times in 100 years. And every time, the way it is portrayed, the director, the actors, the storyline, all of that changes. So when people say, it's already been done, first of all, it hasn't. And the second is, even if it has been done, you haven't been the director. And when you're the director, the way it comes out is different. Now, obviously, you have to learn how to do that direction, but it's possible. It's not just possible, but you can be very good at it.
That's reassuring. Actually, I was at the movies the other night and saw that A Star Is Born is coming out again with Lady Gaga in the lead role as opposed to Barbara Streisand. And that's exactly the scenario. Same story, completely different take. So, yeah, I get the point. Well, one of the things that you talk about is that you really need a precise structure when you're writing. I mean, you've got to be interesting, you've got to tell stories, and you've got to stand out in what is a sea of content out there. And it's that structure, I think, that really frees us. I love frameworks and I love structures. I don't like formulas, but I love where I can actually work within a framework that allows my individuality, but it gives me clear guidance. And that was something that came through very, very clearly in the way that you teach article writing. Would you mind walking us through, obviously the starting point, or I believe, and you've shown, is the topic and the subtopics. So taking one idea and then breaking it down into all the different ways you could look at it. But what else is involved to help us move through that blank page?
So the first thing you've got to realize is that all movies, all stories, all stuff is actually very repetitive. But when we're watching it, when we're reading it, we don't realize it. And only when we analyze it, we realize, oh, there was a structure here. And people resent that structure. They think, well, if I follow this structure, everyone will know and no one will know. Right? So it's in every movie. It's in every book. It's there. So once you see it, you recognize it everywhere. Now, what I tend to do, and I've written, I don't know now, since the year 2000, I've been writing articles, and we've sent out approximately 50 articles a year. So we've approached over 1 million words. No one has come back and said, hey,
I've heard it before.
I recognize the structure, right? They either say it's a shit article or they say it's a good article, or they have objections, but they never say, I recognize the structure. And that's the first thing that you've got to understand, that people are never, ever going to recognize the structure. And even if they do, they admire you for it. They don't think, oh, this is crap. So what we follow is two kinds of structures. The first is what I call the curiosity formula, and the second one is called the 3-point formula. And the curiosity formula is what a 5-year-old would ask you. So you say, let's talk about exploration on Mars. And the kid would go, what is Mars? Or what is exploration on Mars? Why is it important? How do we, explore? When do we go? So the kid starts to ask this how, what, why, when, not necessarily all the, how, what, why, where, when, but, how, what, how, whatever. And then you get this whole bunch of questions. Now, the bunch of questions are not really what you're going to put in your article. The bunch of questions are the framework that enable you to then get the information together. It gives you it triggers off the answers that you need to give and put into the article. And once you get to that point, once you've given enough information, automatically the next phase becomes, well, I don't think exploration on Mars is such a good idea. So what you get is objection. You get pushback. So a structure of an article is how, what, why, where, when, and then you get objections, you get some examples, possibly a summary, and then you wrap up that article. The curiosity formula, on the other hand, starts off with, okay, it's a lot like a presentation. It says, I'm going to talk about 3 points, and the 3 points about exploration on Mars are point 1, this, point 2, this, point 3, this, and then let's go to point 1 and explore that in greater detail. So you cover point 1 in great detail, point 2 in great detail, point 3 in great detail. You then run into the same thing, which is objections. You run into examples. You run into a summary, and you're done. So these are the only 2 formulas I know you said, or formulas or structures or whatever. The only two things I've used, and I'm telling you, you can read the articles and you'll struggle to say, oh yeah, there it is.
So that's, I know this is probably a question that's been asked before, and I think I may know the answer, but I'll see how you respond. The idea of, okay, I want to write an article about X topic. Let's say it's about increasing business confidence, just as an example. Do I this hand choose the 3-point formula, or do I on this hand choose the curiosity formula? What helps determine the way to go? Is it you as an individual? Is it the type of topic? How can we sort of work out which way to go?
I have a bias towards the 3-part stuff because the 3-part sometimes encapsulates. So when you write the 3-part stuff, you go, okay, let's cover the first part, okay? And you say, what is increasing business confidence? How do we go about it? What could go wrong? Within that first part, you still have to go through the same bunch of questions, which is like, what is business confidence? Why is it important? All those kind of questions. So they almost form the sub-question within that main section. So that's why I prefer to do it. But the second reason why I do that is because I'll often say, okay, I'm going to talk to you about, say comedy writing secrets, right? And we're going to cover 3 points on comedy writing secrets. And I have no idea what the first point is or the second point or the third point. But I know I have one point, and that is, okay, so comedy is built on setup, and then I know there's punchline, and I go, oh, what the hell is the third one? And so then I have to fill in the third one. And so I usually start off with, I'm going to cover 3 points, and that way it forces me to cover those 3 points, and you get a pretty substantial article. When I started out, that substantial article meant about 800 to 1,000 words. Today I use that same system, the same structure to write 5,000 words worth of article, and I could write, and I use the same structure to write a book, the same structure to write a presentation, a webinar. So the more I use it, the better I get at it, and the better clients get at it.
It's like anything that we practice, that we actually put that guided, focused attention on, we can increase the skill. I don't believe that if you don't see yourself as a natural writer, that actually precludes you from writing. If you can move around within these structures that give you that guidance and you'll build the confidence as you actually write more often.
Yeah, I don't believe in natural skills, by the way. So, I mean,
yay.
That is the task that we take on, because the skills that we teach and we will teach are things that automatically people say, I can't do that. So for instance, we teach a cartooning course, and I mean, you can go on a plane and, say, do you have a doctor? And 35,000 feet, there's a doctor, there's a nurse, there is a, there is a, I don't know, dancer, singer, everything. You can get the whole shebang. And you say, do we have a cartoonist here? And they go, no. Right? So we teach that, and we get, so the beauty of Psychotactics is that we don't give a money-back guarantee on any courses and workshops. So why do the clients come back? There's only one reason they would come back. It's because they got the skill. And so it's the same thing with article writing. It's the same thing with copywriting. It's the same thing. If we do a cooking course tomorrow, it'll be exactly the same thing. And if you don't have the skill and you become so good that people think you're a professional, then I think it depends on the structure and the system and the teacher.
I agree. And I think it's important to, especially when we're in the online world, it's important to decide who are you going to learn specific skills from, and not to do too much shopping around, not to, be subscribed to 73 different online newsletters and just take in information all the time. I think we have to be discerning. And that starts in the first instance with being clear on what are the skills that you want to develop. In this concept of that this whole series, this podcast series is about, it's about increasing our visibility so that we can connect with more of the clients that we're here to serve. And if you step back and look at your skill base, look at what you're doing and find the gaps, then you've got a very good chance of improving them. So that's where I've learned from half a dozen different people, depending on the skill that the skill gap that I'm looking to close. Hence why, I'm sitting under your tutelage when it comes to the article writing. And there's a piece that you do in the article writing, which I am definitely it's can I say weakness? That'll do for now because I don't have enough expertise or experience in it yet. But it's the concept of the first 50 words. And you do it so well with the storytelling, with the drawing people into an article. And the headlines, I found a great example. So there's two things I'd love you to talk about a little bit here, is the first 50 words concept. I tried it with one of my posts, one of my recent posts after doing that part in the course, and actually using an analogy, using a story before I then went into the base of what I was wanting to say. And it was a bit awkward to do it, but when I read back my own article, left some space and did some editing later, it was so much more interesting than it was just a normal article. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you can encourage people to make those first 50 words, to decrease the bounce rate, I guess, on article writing or article reading. So can you talk to us about that? And then I'll bring back to the other topic.
So the first 50 words are not exactly 50 words. They could be 100 words. It could be 150 words, but no more than that. And the point of the first 50 words is the moment the reader hits the article, they are completely captivated, right? So to give you an example, let's say you say hurricanes are measured on a scale of 1 to 5, and volcanoes are measured on a scale of 1 to 8. And a supervolcano is measured at 7. So what that sets it up is like, wow, a supervolcano 7, what's bigger than a supervolcano, right? And what happens is now you've got the reader captivated. Another example would be the boy got on the bus, he would never get off. What it's doing is it's what comedians do. They're setting up the whole thing for the article. And the way I tend to do it is to tell a story. Now, the biggest mistake that people do when they try to get the first 50 words is so say the word is stuck, or say the word is underdog. And then they will go onto Google and they will search for stories of underdog or stuck. And that will completely make it hopeless. So for instance, on the article writing course itself, what you'll find is that 3 people will come up with the same story for stuck, which is some guy went into some canyon and then the boulder fell on him and then he got stuck and then he had to amputate his arm and essentially you have the same thing. So if you go around searching for the word that you are trying to portray, you will always get stuck. And that is the thing. You cannot do that. Even as a cartoonist, if you go on, you say, great meeting, and you go on Google Images, you get all of these crappy images. Right? They all look the same. So what the problem is, then you're stuck with, 10,000 people finding the same story and telling the same story about Arnold Schwarzenegger being the underdog or something like that. What you've got to do is you have to understand that the only part that you have to work with is the ending of the story. That's where you play director. So let's say it's the Apollo mission, right? And you don't know anything, but you find something really interesting about the Apollo mission. And then you write that story with, say, maybe 100 words. And you go, and they pulled that one switch, the wrong switch, and they got stuck. So the only thing you're really changing is that last line. And then you're directing the article in a different way. If you said underdog and you say, blah, 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 this was the interesting bit and there, whatever. And the people on the aircraft, on the spacecraft, they were not the prime crew. The prime crew had to stay behind because they were ill, and these were the underdogs. So the story hasn't changed. What you've got to do is you've got to find not just a story, but just one interesting point. And when you have that interesting point, you build a story around it, not too much detail, just nice enough detail, and then tweak the last line. And when you tweak the last line, that last line can go in any direction. It can go into potential, it can go into stuck, it can go into any direction because you're the director. And that's what makes it interesting. So you can take a story about bats and create stuck. You can take a story about thermocol and make it stuck, and Apple and make it stuck. It doesn't matter what. You have to find the interesting story in the first place. And that's what makes it entertaining.
So I just want to make sure that I'm understanding this concept correctly. So if I want to talk about comparison, for example, that's something that I talk about a lot because it's something that we get funnily enough, stuck in a lot. So if that's the concept, if that's the topic, if that's the word, and perhaps I've subtopic it and I'll go further down, and so I get a more like a long tail description of what the article's about, I could literally find any interesting story and then relate it into my topic by making a change to that last sentence. Is that what you're saying? That I can be a story catcher, I can find things and almost shape them in. So the first part of my article becomes interesting, but it's not directly relevant. I've just got to draw the connections between the two pieces that are capturing someone's curiosity and pulling them into the article.
That's exactly right.
Okay. As opposed to having to sit here.
You don't even need an interesting story. You need an interesting fact.
Aha, there's a great one. Okay.
There will be an interesting story around the interesting fact. For instance, I don't know, say in 1815, a volcano called Mount Tambora exploded in Sumbawa in near Indonesia. And as a result of that, Europe didn't have a summer in 1816. Okay, so they were stuck. Okay. and if you want to take your comparison, it's like, and if we compare the crop failure in the U.S. and we compare the crop failure in Europe, there was no difference. It was exactly the same, right? Both places. The crop failure was exactly the same. And that's exactly what happens when you're comparing A with B. Sometimes the comparison turns out to be exactly the same. What do you do then? So what you're really doing is you've got your story, you've got your directorship there, you're doing your little thing, and then you're bridging using the components of the story. So the components of the story might be this happened, and then that happened, and that happened. So A happened, B happened, C happened. Now, when you're bridging the story, you have to go, A happened, B happened, C happened. And when you do that, and I'm sorry, but it's probably a little more technical if you don't have this information in front of you. But essentially, what you're doing is bridging. And this is why I can use story about bats, about, I don't know, you take any topic and you can connect anything with anything. I mean, there might be 3 topics out of 10 million topics that you can't connect.
But in the real scheme of things, you can. So I guess, okay, here's the next $1 million question. If it's in my head, then it's quite possibly in one of my listeners' heads as well. Okay, so where do I get those facts? I mean, this is just because you're a reader, I assume. Like, I'm a huge reader as well. I've got, I'm surrounded by books sitting here in my office, and I'm always picking things up. It could be something that you read, that you heard, that you saw. That feels like there's where the practice piece comes in, is actually dialing up your awareness levels to actually become a bit of a story and a fact catcher so that you can start embedding them. No? Okay. And how do I bridge that gap with finding my facts and stories?
Right. So there are loads of websites. We give this on the article writing course, but I mean, I can just give you one link, and you can have thousands of stories. So there is a website like todayifoundout.com, right? And every day they have stories about history and geography and God knows what else, politics, everything. You have the Smithsonian.com. That will give you a whole bunch of stories that go in every possible direction. You have this great thing called Smith Journal, which is from Australia. It's an astounding magazine. You should subscribe to it. So Smith Journal.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So I mean, between these 3, you will have so many stories. You in the next 15 minutes, you could have enough stories for the rest of the year.
That's brilliant, and I obviously haven't got to that point yet.
Here's the point. You can't store the stories. You can't just take the stories and go, okay, I'm going to store it. No, you're never going to find any use for them. You have to read every one of the stories. Even if it's 2 paragraphs, you have to read it. Because when you read it, you're filing it away in your brain. Then you take the story and put it into Evernote. And then you go, oh, wait, 6 years ago, I read about a volcano in Indonesia. Let me type this in Evernote. And that's when it comes up. So that's the catch. The catch isn't the stories. The stories are all there. Every podcast, you have a podcast like the BBC In Our Time. And they go into everything. They go into bacteria, into I don't know. I'm listening to what's his name? Michael Faraday. They go into Rabindranath Tagore. They go into stuff that you've never heard in your life before. Everything is fascinating.
Well, those particular sites, I'll make sure they're in the resource section on the webpage for your episode. So thank you so much for sharing those. And I'll also put a link through to Evernote in case anyone listening isn't aware of that as a great tool for you to actually capture things within and keep hold of them. Okay, so we've come up with our really interesting first 50 words after working out what the topic is or the subtopic we're going to talk about. We've now chosen, am I going to do the curiosity approach, or am I going to do the 3-point formula approach? And now I'm into the writing of the actual article. I saw a great example of the difference that sub-headlines can make between helping people, skim read an article and feel like, oh, this is something I should read. Could you comment on the importance of making sure or crafting those sub-headlines that they do a good job?
Okay, so what people tend to do is they just write an article, but they don't write subheads, or they write really klutzy subheads. And the point is that it's like music. So I don't know if you've heard the phrase, but it says the silence between the notes is what makes the music, right? So you have to have silence at some point in time. And there's that white space. So you finish a paragraph, and then you head it to the next paragraph. And that is the silence. And it allows the reader to rest. Just for a fraction of a second, but it's a rest. The problem is, how does it connect from the previous idea? So you've just finished the previous paragraph, and now you have to go to the next paragraph. And that's just what I did with my sentence. So whatever you say, you just continue that thought. So supposing I say, the man was found on the moon, and he was looking really dejected. And the reason for his dejection was that he hadn't had a Marmite for a month, right?
I'm so glad you said Marmite, not Vegemite. That shows you're a true Kiwi.
So you might not have noticed, but it was dejected and dejection. It's the same idea. So if I were to take that last idea and put it in the previous paragraph, which is the man on the moon was really dejected, and then the subheadline is the reason for his dejection. Now it's a natural flow with that little white space in between. And so the reader can almost jump from subheadline to subheadline to subheadline, which they don't do, by the way, but they can do that, and they get a storyline because you've written it that way. And so it's very fascinating because, remember, your eye is still picking up stuff that your brain isn't picking up. I mean, in the sense that it's still taking a visual snapshot of things. Right? That's why when you start reading the beginning of the sentence, you kind of know where the sentence is headed. So your eye is still picking. So all of these snapshots are being taken by your brain, and that's the sequence. You can read the subheadlines. In fact, you can go to Psychotactics and pick up one of the articles and go through just the subheadlines, and you'll find, hey, here's a story.
That is such a useful thing to think about going back. I know that you really talk about how important it is to give us space between when we're writing and then going back to edit. Because I know I've certainly been guilty often of trying to write and edit as I write and then get myself all flummoxed. So much better to give space. And there's another thing that we can do when we're giving ourselves that time and that space to go back and just read our headlines. And go, am I getting? Because I love that ease of that concept of, do my headlines actually tell me an abbreviated story? If they do, then they're good headlines.
Yeah, these sub-headlines. The headlines.
Sub-headlines, yeah. If they're abbreviated story from the subheads, I'm doing a good job. Now, one of the last pieces in your structural elements of article writing is leave the headline itself, since we've just talked about subs, leaving the headline itself until the end. What makes a good headline? Because I've certainly in the past, be it on email newsletters or articles, I don't necessarily give enough attention to the headline. And I know that's a skill I need to develop and I'll be working on through the course. But it's that idea of, oh, okay, I've spent all this time writing the damn thing, bang, there's the headline. And that's not good. So could you talk to us about what makes a compelling or what makes a good headline for our articles?
Okay, so couple of things. We'll do a little mini headline course. I mean, there is a headline course that goes for like 8 weeks, and you become like this super great at writing headlines. But there's no reason to be super great when you can already be quite great. So let's do that right now. So you take a topic like, say, dinosaurs, right? Random stuff. So just dinosaurs. And you say how to. So you just use the word how or why, but let's start with how. And you say how dinosaurs eat their breakfast quickly every morning. Okay? Just how. Okay? Why dinosaurs eat their breakfast quickly every morning. Just by putting how or how to, or how to eat like a dinosaur, how to eat as quickly as a dinosaur every morning. So we have how to, or why. Just by doing that, you have created an above average headline. So those are two things, which is how and why. And the third thing is details. So details are things like percentages, how to improve the dinosaurs eating, I don't know, something by 30%, right? Or how dinosaurs eat at night so that they consume better or whatever. So what we're seeing there is possibly a combination of the how and why, but also some kind of specific, like 3% or at night or in the month of July, some kind of specific that attracts the reader. So we have how, we have why, and we have the third one, which is some kind of detail or specific or statistic. Now, that's the first part of the headline. But the second part of the headline is something that kind of gets into brackets. So you go, how dinosaurs eat their lunch quickly, even when it's dark outside. So what even is doing is putting a but kind of situation. It's like, even though we have this problem. But you can use even or you can use and. So how dinosaurs eat their breakfast quickly and eat their dinner at the same time. Right?
How dinosaurs eat their breakfast quickly and how you can too. Or and you can get your kids to
right. And now use even. So see, this is fun. When you learn in this fun manner, then now you already know how, why, details. So that's the first part of the headline, and then what you put in brackets is either and or even. That's it. And that's your headline course.
Voila! That was fantastic. I know that you've got a wonderful resource, a free resource that's on your site. I mean, I was going to ask this at the end, but now this is a very good place to ask about it. Where can we send people to actually dig down deeper on that headline stuff that you have just been talking about?
Well, we've got a brand new website. And
it's gorgeous. I went to it again and went like, oh my God, it's like there's major renovation that's happened. It looks awesome.
Thank you. Yeah. So anyway, so you'll go to the front page and you'll see stuff about Auckland and stuff. But at the bottom of every page, you'll see a little orange book about, why headlines fail and how to recover from them or something like that. So it's the same formula.
I love it. Okay, I'll make sure I put that link in the notes so that everyone can go and have their Why Headlines Fail course. And yeah, you're right. We learn so much easier when we're having fun. There's no doubt that the combination of everything you've got on your site, but then coupled with your cartoons, they bring that edge of enjoyment, that extra edge of fun. And so it just feels easy to learn. Well, just the last bit I'd like to jump into with this wonderful conversation is the concept of the next step. When we've written. So we've gone all through, we've written our headline, we're really happy, we've given ourselves space, we've gone back and done some editing, we've checked how those subheads are, we've used this brilliant approach to just having a bit more fun with our headlines to bring people in. But then the concept of the next step. Can you talk to us about how to bring people, take that next step? How does that happen in the article?
Okay, so this is something that I'm not really fond of talking about because people actually think that it's going to be dramatic at that next step. But here's what the next step is about. So next step is, what do you want me to do next? You want me to read an article? You want me to buy something? Do you want me to, I don't know, whatever you want me to do. However, there is the very overt next step, which comes at the bottom of the article. And what you've got to do is you've got to recognize that you can't just say, go and read my article or whatever. I mean, we do a really crappy job on this because we haven't, we've got this legacy of like all these hundreds of articles out there. But if you were starting out, you would go, how can I make someone curious about that next step? So you're almost going to write like a headline, which is, you get stuck at when you're trying to create these comparison structures. But there is a way to get out of this comparison structure. Here's a little report that shows you the comparison structures and what you need to do when you're in this situation. So what you're doing there is you're actually enticing the person to go to the next step. Instead of saying, here's a report, go read it, right? That's one of the things. But you're automatically, when people look at our sales page, and our courses fill up like in 20 minutes sometimes, and they look at it and they go, oh, wow, you have a great sales page. Yes, we do. But that sales page is like the last step. The next step is like the last step. You've had the whole article to get your message across. So if you were smart, you would have written about your stuff during the article. Some of the examples, so if you listen to the 3-month vacation podcast, I will be talking about something and then I'll say, so here's how we went about the pricing for the membership site at 5000 BC. I'm already getting you to the next step. I'm talking about, and then I bring up 5000 BC 17 times, and you don't resent it because I'm showing you the pricing structure. I'm showing you why we increase the prices, how we increase them, what happened, how the clients react to it. And all the time you're hearing 5000 BC, 5000 BC, 5000, just like you are. Now, this is editorial, right? We're having a conversation and you're hearing 5000 BC 6 times. So
it's subliminal, Sean.
It's not subliminal. It's not. I'm telling you, the client is not dumb. They're not stupid. They know what's happening, but they don't resent it because you're being very precise and very helpful. And if you are precise and helpful, you can be as overt as you want. In fact, sometimes I go to the end of the podcast and say, wait a second, I'm not going to tell you any next step because the whole podcast has been an advertorial. And people laugh, right? It only becomes a pain when you're just pitching there. You're not trying to help me at all. You're just going, oh, you are going to miss out. Your family's going to go into debt. Your credit card is going to get maxed out. That's when I resent it.
Well, that's when we're bringing fear in, which is unnecessary. I guess what I'm hearing here is a couple of different things. You're planting a seed. But what you can do is you can use your own business, your own examples, your own services and products to give people examples. As long as you're actually utilizing that as a concrete example that adds value to someone's learning, then go for it. Absolutely go for it. It's not like name dropping. It's not like name dropping. Like I was just, it's not that at all. It's adding value, and it makes perfect sense.
So you should deconstruct it. You should go listen to the podcast. What's happening here? What is he doing? Why is he doing this? How resentful did I feel about it? You actually deconstruct the podcast, or if you just want to listen to the or just want to read the transcript because it's easier to look at it. Whatever it is, look at it and see what is happening there. And you'll find that it's not just me talking about 5000 BC. I will be talking about, say, another case study as well. So there is this mix as well. It's not just, okay, I'm just going to pummel you with all our products and services. No, that wouldn't work either.
No, absolutely. So what we're hearing there with the next step, not too dramatic, just to make sure, we're asking how can we entice or motivate or inspire someone to take a next step, which we've decided is important and will be valuable and useful. So it's how can I help people become curious and motivated to take that next step? So we've got to give that some thought, not just if you want to read more, click here for another article. So it's being intelligent, it's being smart, it's being helpful, it's being of service. All of those things are going to assist in making that article land more and encouraging people to take that next step. Well, we've really got some great structure here, this great insight into the way to structure an article. And I know without doubt that in terms of confidence, the actions of confidence come first and then the feelings of confidence come later, i.e. get out there, get on your bike, start writing and just do it. Bring it in regularly as a part of your practice and you'll find that the skill increases with your ability to write articles when you're actually doing it. But so now we know how to write them. We know why it's important. How would you feel that in terms of a visibility campaign or a visibility strategy overall, how important do you think the article writing is versus other ways of becoming visible? What would you think there?
First of all, it's not about article writing, it's about communication. So you can use the same skills while you're presenting, while you're on YouTube, while you're doing a webinar. It doesn't matter what you're doing. At the end of the day, what you have is how can I transform? this person from where they are to where I would like them to be, and how can I communicate this in the best possible way? So that's really what it's called article writing, but it's a structure. It doesn't sell really well as a structural system to communicate. So we call it article writing.
That's a better way of describing it. But absolutely, it is about communication. And it very much, I think one of the things that I'm hoping my listeners have taken from this is that that concept of structure can then be turned into so many different things, as you're saying, on a webinar, doing a speech, writing an article, hosting a podcast, whatever the case may be. Once you've started to get more confident and more fluent in this art of writing and this art of communication, then that's going to have like a cascade effect on all different areas of your business.
Yeah, but you have to do it like clockwork. You have to do that. So that's the only thing where it all falls apart. So people think, I've written 17 articles and I've got nothing from it. Well, no, that's not going to work. The core of business is just that frequency. If you don't have articles coming out like the news on TV. So when you switch, if you still watch TV, that is, you switch it on at 6 p.m. and it's, there's no news today, there's no news tomorrow. After a while, you stop switching it on at 6. Now, the client doesn't know that you're going to be sending it out at 6 o'clock on Sunday. It's not like they're doing it like TV, but they definitely start skipping the articles once you don't send them, and you get worse at writing, and it becomes much harder to write. So
consistency is what's really important here.
It's crucial. I mean, if there's one way to fail, it is to just do whatever you've been doing so far, which is not doing, just see, the thing is that article writing itself is not what you'd call easy, but with the right structure and with the right teacher, you're able to get to a point where it's not hard anymore. So the biggest problem with article writing is not article writing, but the dread of article writing. And
that's true.
Yeah, and the dread goes away once you have the structure. But then the dread comes right back if you're not in the habit of doing it. So I've drawn cartoons for well over 30 years. I just have to stop drawing for like a week, 2 weeks, and then 2 months can pass. That doesn't mean that my skill has gone away. That doesn't mean that I've become hopeless at it. I'm way better than I was even last year or even 6 months ago. But all I have to do is stop, and that's it.
And then it's almost like you lose your edge. So what we're hearing here is practice the structure. But it's something that I encourage my clients to do in the masterminds that I run, is that to have a system in place in your diary. So for example, Tuesday mornings, that's when I'm going to article write, or Thursday afternoons, or whenever it is for you. Actually be committed to doing this on a regular basis so that you can build up the communication muscle, for want of a better description. And I heard another thing that you said there as well, because writing is one thing, but sharing is the next step. So, I mean, I have your newsletters regularly like clockwork. They're one that I love to read. So that's another important piece, is don't hide your articles under a bushel. Like, get them out there into the world through your newsletters and through social media and things like that as well, yeah?
Yeah. I mean, social media has its limits. It would have worked really well. No one generally clicks on an article on social media, at least that I know of. But I think, people still read on email. They still read on email kind of services, so they'll save it to something like Pocket or whatever, and they'll read. It really depends. There's a guy who writes and he stops writing all summer long, and then he comes back again. I can't even remember his name. He's a friend of mine now, which is embarrassing. But he takes a break twice a year and stuff. And I read his article. I get 4 or 5 newsletters, and I read all their stuff. One is a photographer, David Dukeman. I'll write back to David. The people that write really good stuff that help me, I keep their newsletters, and the rest I just unsubscribe.
No, absolutely. I do exactly the same thing. Well, Sean, you have just shared so much of the deep knowledge and experience that you've got. I mean, as you said at the start, you've written close to a million words now. So there's obviously a structure, an approach, a consistency that works. that absolutely works. You've been doing it like clockwork right alongside your cartooning as well. And it's certainly for someone like me, who is a fan, who is a client, who follows your work and is learning all the time, it obviously pays off. So I guess we've just got to get over that bump in the road, just getting ourselves into, I guess, fit state so that we are consistently writing for us to eventually see, you know, the long-term strategy. It's a long-term strategy. It's not an overnight thing. But then I think most things in business are. We need to commit to the longer term rather than expect instantaneous results. Yeah.
Well, it's really the internet. I mean, if you went back to before 2000, no one expected to start up a business and succeed in 3 months. No one. So everyone would have expected that a business turnaround, you know, even today, you open up a restaurant, you open up so many large, you know, slightly larger businesses. And you know, you go to a resort in Fiji, for instance, they're not recovering their money in 1 year or 2 years. They're looking at 10 years. And the point is that people say, well, that's too long. Well, you're earning money the whole time that you're going. You're still doing some level of consulting. You're still paying the bills. You're still doing the stuff. This $1 million thing that people are after, well, you know, Renuka and I'd say we do twice or thrice as much as we did when we first started. And we're now thrice more competent than we were back then. So is it for money? No, it's not for money, because we decided that we were going to earn the same amount, you know, thrice as much as we needed for the rest of our lives, not any more than that. So the point is it's not about money. After a while, it gets to be a challenge. But if you just decide, okay, I want to do this so that I don't have to work hard anymore, then you're in the wrong business. You really should get a job.
I totally agree with you. It's I think those expectations we've been socialized, you know, internet-wise, to have this expectation that the growth cycle is shortened enormously, and it's not. So I'm really pleased to hear you. I really appreciate hearing that reiterated from you as well, that we're in this for the long haul. We want to create a sustainable business that's fulfilling, that is of value, that's helpful, that makes a difference, and with a little bit of patience, you know, woven into that fabric as well. I think it's really important that those conversations happen often, rather than the social media feed, which is throwing overnight success in our faces so often, and it makes a lot of people feel inadequate. Why isn't it working for me? Well, it probably is. You just need to have that patience woven in as well.
Yep. There's a lot of stuff that you have to do. It's just
isn't there? So, but communication is definitely a skill. If we can develop the skill, if we can get really juicy about the topics that we want to write about from our perspective, that answer the questions that we're hearing in the market from our audience, we're going to go a long way towards, you know, solidifying our visibility and that regard for what it is that we can help people with. So thank you, Sean. This has been fantastic. So I will put the links in, obviously, to come to your site, to visit Psychotactics, to see the great cartoons, but to get that headline report. Is there anything else that you'd like to leave the listeners with at the moment?
I mean, they can read The Brain Audit. It's available on Amazon. It's also available on our site. And it's a really good book because of the way that it has all these examples. And what you can see is how the article has then morphed into a book. So almost every chapter is kind of an article, but yet it forms a structure that helps you in your business. So it's like a double winner, because you understand how the customers buy and why they don't. And the second thing is that you're also physically, you know, the first time you're reading it, you're like, oh, how do I apply this to my business? But the third time you're reading it, you're going, oh, that's clever. And so it gives you a second or third reading, which then enables you to write better.
I definitely recommend The Brain Audit, you know, and it teaches us how the brain goes through the whole decision-making process, and you get a lot of aha moments when you're reading it. So I'll make sure that I put the link in for that one as well. So that is brilliant. Thank you so much, Sean.
We better stop, otherwise
we could keep talking for weeks without a doubt.
No, it's the links. The links, they will go on forever.
We'll have a link chain going down the page. I can see it now. No, that was wonderful. I know anyone that's been listening has been taking copious amounts of notes and now needs to go forth and action them. So thanks again for your time. It's been fantastic.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And to you, my lovely listener, I hope that's exactly what's happened to you, that there has been a whole bunch of aha moments where you recognize that this article writing thing, this communication skill is something that you can learn. You don't have to be a naturally brilliant article writer to actually get this structure, to understand how you can write in a way that will captivate and help your audience. And that can only contribute to raising your visibility overall in the marketplace. I highly recommend that you do go along to Psychotactics, grab that headline report, and look at investing in the brain audit. It will open your eyes to a new way of communicating because you understand what your client, your most aligned client, is experiencing. So thank you again for spending your time with me today and with Sean on the Your Next Chapter podcast. Enjoy the rest of your day. Take care, and I will talk to you again very soon. Thanks for listening to the Your Next Chapter podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please let me know. Pop over to angelaraspas.com to subscribe to the show and leave a review. And whilst you're there, you can also enjoy valuable free resources, including show notes and downloads, along with the Next Chapter community, where you can connect with other wholehearted women on the same journey as you. We'd love to welcome and support you as your next chapter unfolds. See you next time.